some, I mean, I wish we could recycle more water. We are governed by Colorado water law, which is pretty strict in how we use water. That I think is probably one of our biggest roadblocks on the water side. We've done, part of the design was, and some of the stuff was, how are we going to divert waste? We are currently running over 90% waste diversion in the operation of the building. And so we kind of planned some of that in. I mean, there were always challenges in terms of just people moving, people changing, open cubes where people had 5-foot trendway before. Was a, you know, a lot of that depended on the age of the workforce. It's interesting that our younger generation, if they could have no furniture, they'd have no furniture. Right? If you're under the age of 30, you don't want furniture. It gets in the way. Right? It's interesting to look at some of that dynamic and how people have adapted to that space.
How's the noise level in there? It's a lot of hard surfaces.
A lot of hard surfaces. There is acoustical on the ceiling, and there is a white noise generator. All right, so let's kind of breeze through some of these. There's all the radiant tubing going in. So there's a picture aerial showing how the foundation was put in with the serpentine pathway. What's significant about the photo?
Dark.
It's dark. When you look at office buildings, they are empty something like 70% of the time. And if you want real energy savings, get the building to turn off. And interesting how hard we worked to get plug loads off and get all of the lights off and still meet our egress requirements. There's a whole strategy in how we engineered the lighting system. It's all vacancy based. If you want the lights on, guess what? You got to find a light switch. If you want the lights off, guess what? You got to find the light switch. If you forget, it will turn them off. It will not turn them on. And that is a big deal.
Have you changed did they change the maintenance of the building to on during hours? Or, you know, part of the issue is...
So one of the things you'll see on our results of the lighting is that the only place our lighting is off is in the evenings because we still have an existing cleaning contract, and they will probably back that up on the next renewal. And you'll see that there is, even with that, we're still below the lighting loads.
What is your policy for lighting and HVAC for employees or researchers who want to come back nights or weekends to do the research?
So from a lighting point of view, if you hit a switch, the lights will come on.
All of them?
All for that zone. They are zoned, fairly large zones. Security has their own lighting system. So when they do their walkthroughs, one of the things we noticed about our other buildings that are on motion sensor control, every hour our security guys walk through the building. Guess what? The lights are on 24 hours a day. And so we came up with their own egress pathway, and they have their own special switch, which is energized in off hours.
The burglars and all that?
And I don't think you're getting into the building. It's a secured DOE facility. And so they actually have their own path to deal with that. HVAC, I think it is kind of like our lease buildings. I think they're still running kind of the standard like 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. on that, which is what we've been doing for 30 years. So.
And can they get it after hours or not?
I'm sure in the conference, so we've got a conference facility that has a more traditional VAV because of the fresh air and the dynamic we need in that fresh air. That you can schedule on and off. I mean, you could call our good buddy Joe, and Joe, I'm sure, would turn them on for you.
Do they consider using like tags, RFID tags to track people and control HVAC or lighting?
So there's a whole discussion about privacy and knowing where people are and other things. I mean, we wear badges, and they have RFIDs in them. And so we've talked about some of that in terms of how to turn on plug loads. Some of what has happened is that our plug loads now are so small that we have some plug strip controllers, and the parasitic on this plug strip controller is more than what we're trying to turn on and off now. Just to kind of show you where we're with plug loads. So if you use, what is this particular chart here? 0.9, or watts per square foot. My colors are terrible, right?
Occupied versus unoccupied.
Occupied hours, yeah, So if you're using 0.9 occupied, you're really not turning off to 0.8. Or even if you are starting to turn off, right? I mean, you know, if you get halfway or so, you know, it's still not enough. And we really needed to be somewhere up in this range before we were all said and done. And so it's pretty dramatic how much of a difference you can have on the plug load side. But it was both shifting it to the left to get the building off as well as reducing the loads. So just on the plug load side, elevators. We got rid of all the hydraulic elevators, and we have a traction elevator that's regenerative. Interesting piece, the lights actually turn off when the elevator's not being used. And what is interesting is the default, so it actually is in the firmware. It's pretty easy to do. But you have to request it from the elevator manufacturers. The default is on 24 hours a day. And yet they know when people are in the elevator, they know when the elevator is being used. It is very easy to program. You don't need motion sensors and the rest of it. You just tell the firmware to do it. But it was amazing how many iterations with the elevator guys we had to do to get that. The other interesting thing is that this is one place where the design team did not meet our requirements on the RFP. And we had something like a requirement of 1,100 feet per second, and I think these elevators are about 1,000 feet. Is that right? No. Per minute, sorry. It's getting tiring here, right? 1,100 feet per minute, and these were something about 1,000. But what the design team came back and said, by the time you stand there, push the button, open the door, close the door, go up 4 flights, open the door, close the door, the time delta was only about a second. And so we actually allowed them that duration, but they brought that to us because they were able to show a huge energy savings by not meeting that requirement. And so, you know, every now and then you get something like that. Break rooms, we use centralized break rooms in each wing and had common refrigerator areas, got rid of the drinking fountains, coolers, provided ice cube trays, provided ice makers, provided hot water at the taps, dishwashers, Energy Star dishwashers. I mean, the worst one are these bottle thingies, right? The hot and the cold water tap. I actually sat there one day and watched people use these things, right? And people would come up to them, and they'd fill it half with hot and half with cold, right? You know, and we're like, we'll just get rid of them. And so we provide filtered water at the sinks as an amenity now. And you save all of the trucks coming onto campus with bottled water and all the rest of it. Just went away. Task lights we talked about, went down to 6-watt LED task lights. We went to voice over IP phones, and it's went to 2 watts per workstation on the phones. Copiers, printers, fax machines. We had an incredible number of fax machines. The only thing they did was print out mortgage flyers. Right? When was the last time you sent a fax to somebody?
6 years ago.
Right? They went away. Right? We did provide some fax capabilities in the 3-in-1 machines. And we had almost, or just over 1 printer per person, I think is what the number was. We got rid of all the personal printers. Again, it's interesting. It seems that our younger workforce uses a lot less printing.
Was your break room, you're changing the break rooms, the main reason why you reduced that's what you mean by coffee kiosks?
So we provided coffee makers in the break rooms. We also went to a central coffee kiosk.
Per floor,
Okay.
per section, per.
Actually, there's one for the whole building. One coffee, like you buy espresso and other stuff, right?
Nice.
But there's also coffee makers in the kitchens that we provided that automatically shut off. So either way, interesting, our coffee vendor in the old facility, they had stuff that ran all the time. It was amazing. But we put a meter on their plug loads, and it was amazing, right? And part of their new contract was you can come into the building, but you only get power turned on between 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. And you figure it out after that. And again, it was changing their behavior as a vendor. None of our vending machines have lights in them. And again, that was something that we negotiated with our vendor. The computers, 90% of our staff now have Data center, a lot of virtualization, increased the efficiency of our UPS. We went from something like 65 watts per employee down to just over 40 watts per employee on the data center. Let's see, I think we've got most of this. Yeah, we default to duplex, no banner pages. You got a really good reason if you want your own printer. Yeah, our IT folks loved it because it really reduced their maintenance costs, dramatically. So this is kind of interesting here. We had a government-required screensaver that basically says don't do bad things with your computer. Right? And our highest energy mode of operating our computer was when the screensavers were running, 24 hours a day. Okay. And so we worked with our IT folks, they found other ways that they could comply with that security directive, and we eliminated screensavers, and we deployed Energy Star as a corporate setting. Basically monitors and hard drives turn off after 5 minutes, machines go into hibernate after 30 minutes. And that made a huge difference on the plug loads. We also eliminated, because we went to laptops, we eliminated all the UPSs, all those little things under the desks. They all went away. Gone. Part of it is that for every watt we save in the building, back to the PV economics piece of it, for every watt we save in the building, if we're committed to going zero, is $33 worth of PV you don't have to buy. And if you're committed to going to that level, capital costs, every watt you save is $33 worth of PV not purchased. You have to buy the PV.
Oh, because of the additional
Because it only,
machine cost?
yeah, well, PV only operates, 5-6 hours a day, right? And then for us, anything multiplied by 800 is a big number. That was the coffee cake. So just a little bit. So one of these lines, the model is the black line, and the blue line is the actual performance. And so, when you stick the model on top of it, you can get pretty close. Oh. Okay. So that's a cumulative.
That's the cumulative.
And we'll share these if you want to kind of dig into these. Top line here is what the model said for plug loads. That's what we gave the design team, was that black line. Our actual performance are the colored lines by month. You can see at nighttime we're not quite as good as we wanted to be, but we've got a huge reduction in the day. We actually had more laptop acceptance than we had proposed initially. This one's lighting power density. So you can see, we're fairly close on between the dotted line, which is what the model said. So that was actually the design team came up with that model, except for this cleaning problem. So that's what that evening is. And people tend to work later rather than come in earlier. And so that has contributed to that a little bit. Here's the cost. So we are right here with our building. Here's where the new addition is. And then these are a whole bunch of other buildings, LEED certified at different levels, other office buildings. So we are definitely kind of in that lower third.
Are these in your neighborhood?
I forget if this one is just ours or if this is national, and I cannot read what
San
those say.
Joaquin, no, that's everywhere.
Yeah, I think those are everywhere on this one. One of our staff guys put
Those
this
are
together.
furnished buildings, compared apples to apples.
Well, what do apples look like, right? Furnished, unfurnished, how much landscaping, we did not pay for parking lots in ours. The parking lot was separate, separate procurement. So one of the things that we did find is that it's very, very hard to make these comparisons.
Since you're talking LEED here, do you have a chart that shows how many dollars per square foot for HVAC? Because people ask that question a lot.
I don't have that with me.
$5
I'm trying to think of one of my colleagues. We have been asked that question. Again, part of it was that since we procured it as a package, we didn't get those costs back. But we've asked I know we've asked the team for that. I don't know if we have that. I know know they spend more on design. I know they spend less on HVAC. I know they spend more on like envelope and those pieces, kind of just in kind of big gross pieces. The lighting was the same.
Was the furnishing included in your 259?
Yes. Somebody was asking about what the breakdown is. So the big chunk is data center, or I'm sorry, the big chunk is space heating in this. This green big chunk is the data center. And so you see, we've got it to the point where the cooling is kind of in the noise. Partly because most buildings that have cooling, they're cooling the lights and they're cooling the plugs. And if you get those things out of there, you basically can convert a building back to a skin-dominated building. So to have a building this large that's skin-dominated is a big deal.
How would exterior lights be zero in a federal building?
It's not zero. It's
small.
It's 0 point something. Yeah. It is all LED and they're all motion sensor controlled outside. Yeah. One of the things that we have done from an occupant point of view is we have deployed agents out onto everybody's desktop, and so they can see what is going on currently with the building if they care. You hope that maybe if they have a dashboard, they become more interested in what's going on. We also have, the upper one is the first generation, the bottom one is yet to be deployed, second generation. There are some dashboards in the lobby. It is interesting how much time people spend studying these things. When you walk around the building, either somebody's showing it or somebody's, kind of studying it. Is the building currently at 0? Has it been at 0 for the last 24 hours? Where is the energy being used? The data center guys always get harassed because the data center line is it's nearly